Hello loves, it's your girl Shannon and we're back at it with another Photoshop tutorial. This one was second highest requested, and what we're going to do is modify this template to include some players that were requested from the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now this is a template design that has a local high school and the local high school players. However, you're going to see how you can modify it to be whatever team and whatever players that you like. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to locate my photos. And I'm going to grab 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these were the players requested by one of my dear Facebook buddies. Let's see if I can just drag it right here on onto the Photoshop. Hold on just a second. Should be able to just drag and drop them on the artboard. There we go. And we'll hit enter for each file that comes in. And right now I'm believing that it is putting it below my current layer. And that's fine because we'll just expand our layers and see where it's all going. Yeah, it's definitely going to the background. That's cool. We'll just take all of those. I just hit the first one, hit my shift key, select my last one, and I'm going to drag these all the way to the front. And right now I'm more worried about my composition, just the layout of my players. So I'm going to take the players with the photo effect and I'm just going to turn that opacity down so that I can barely see where they are. And sometimes you'll need that guidance, and sometimes it's more distracting than it is helpful, and you'll want to put it away. So I'm going to close down my layers just a little bit. Control plus to zoom in. And I'm going to Control T to transform the size of my images. And pretty much before I get started with layout, I try to make each of my players relatively the same size. And when I use to gauge whether they're the same size, I use their heads. And if I really wanted to make sure I had it just right, I would actually lay them one on top of the other and make sure their helmets were approximately the same size. And then I would worry about layout. And you can just eyeball this. You don't have to use this strict of a technique, but this usually keeps me sane when I'm trying to resize images after I've already figured out where I want them. And sometimes you won't be able to make them the same size depending on how much of the pose that you want to show. But here I think we're able to get them all about the same size. And then once we get them placed, we can determine if we want to, that one I couldn't really see because he's about the right size. And let me close down my layers panel just a little bit and bring my image over to the left. Some of these names will get pretty long, and when I bring them in, when I drag them into my artboard, they keep the original name of the file, which is helpful because when you're right clicking and trying to figure out what you're clicking on, it is oh so helpful to have these files named. So the more organized you start off, the better you will be. Now before I get into what we're going to do with these players today, let me group all my players. I'm going to turn them off for a second, and I'll turn up the opacity on my old player levels. And let's see what we have here. We have this triangle. It's in the foreground, but I have it kind of watermarked. And then what we'll do, we'll play with letting the image pop out in front of the triangle a little bit. We're going to have fun with that today. I have the word mark that's up front. Right now it says Cocoa Tigers. We're going to change that. And then I have a layer mask applied to it where I took a brush that had a crackle effect to it and I just put it on top of this layer to subtract some of the image there. So it does not destructively do anything to the logo, but it gives it like a little vintage look. So you could turn this off if you wanted to. You could disable it if you didn't like the look of the crackle layer. I'm going to turn it back on. I think it gives it a little, just a little character. Let's see. This is our photo layer. So it has the photos, and then it also has some smoke and motion effects going on there, and we're just going to play with some brushes to achieve that. We're not going to do a Photoshop action because I think that does involve quite a lot, and most of you can get brushes, but maybe you can't get the Photoshop actions or run the Photoshop actions, because they do eat up quite a little bit of your hardware. It's not your memory. What is it? Your RAM. I'm sorry. It's a little late tonight. So yeah, it does definitely use resources on your computer. So I don't want to get everybody used to the fact that you might have to do actions. You can achieve the look of actions with brushes, and we're going to play with that today. Next we have the logo that's in the background, and again I have a layer mask on there that kind of eats away at the graphic a little bit. We could turn that off by disabling the layer mask, and it will bring forth the full image there. I'm going to go ahead and enable that. You have your flames, and I'm going to turn off the image layer for the photos just so you can see the flames are already there. You don't have to do anything to them. We may even change the colors of the flames today. And then I have a layer of light smoke. The same smoke on a separate layer just intensifies it. And then we have this dense dark smoke. And we can turn our layers on and off depending on what we want to see and how it affects our overall layers. And we'll even change the colors of some of this stuff. So I don't know what we're going to end up with. This is art, so we're just going to play with it as we go, and hopefully we get something that we like. So let's get started with placement of our players. Now when I right click on a player, I should be able to see the name of the layer that I'm trying to get to, and I'm just going to go ahead and spread them out right now so I can see what I'm working with. Kind of get the idea of which players have more of their pose available to stick out of the image, which ones need to be cut off because maybe like this one, it doesn't have legs, so we'll probably want to modify where we place it based on that. Now this is the only picture I could find of Bashad Breland, number 21, and I believe, I don't know if he's recently traded to this team, but it was really hard to find a photo. That's the only one that I could find that that had him in this uniform. So my apologies for this image, but we're gonna make it work. I don't see why we can't. And as you can see, part of his leg is cut off here, and then he's really tackling a whole nother player. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna gray out that player so that it doesn't mess with the colors in our design and the focus, because you don't want the focus to be on a whole nother team. Let's see here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there's one more, and he's tiny. I probably should have picked a better size image. Didn't realize this until after I started cutting, but we're gonna make it do what it do. All right, and shrink him down just a little bit. And then Mr. Kicker, he's the only one that really has a full body. But we're going to play off of that depending on how we do the wordmark logo, and we may have him kind of played a little bit in front and behind the wordmark logo. So we're going to play with that. All right. The other thing that I'm going to do before I get started is I like to make sure that all of my images have about the same saturation and colors going on, and I don't necessarily see that, especially in reds. It can throw you off. So for instance, for this one, this is Chris Jones. We're going to do a layer, new adjustment layer, little hue saturation. We're going to use the previous layer to create a clipping mask. And let's go off of the reds. and just selectively change just the reds. And I might brighten it up a little bit. I might brighten all these colors. I like saturation, and I just like for it to look like true colors and not, you know, too pop art. But for certain effects, I do like it to have that look. Let's see, we got that. And then I might clean up this white a little bit. I'm thinking I see a little cyan in there. And the way that I check is I bring it all the way up, saturation. I say, ooh, I see that cyan. And I bring it down because there's really no need for blue in this image. I might even go ahead and check my blues and make sure, yep, I still see blue. So I'm going to bring it down so then we get a cleaner white. And then my whites can be a little more consistent. I think that one's good to go. We might have some colors you may tone a little bit better later, but I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to click on the kicker and give him maybe a little more saturation to his jersey. So we'll do layer, new adjustment layer, hue and saturation. Use the previous layer to create a clipping mask because we want to apply this only to this kicker. So let's click on that and see what we can do with the saturation of the reds. So I'll turn my saturation all the way up just to make sure that I am in fact affecting something, because sometimes you'll think it's red and it's not really red at all. It'll be on the magenta layer. So I can change my dark. Let's say it was a little too bright and I wanted it to be more of the burgundy colors. You can do that with almost any image that you get. Let's say you have a person with a blue outfit and you want to make the outfit purple. That's how you would go about doing that. I think I'm just going to bring the saturation up a little bit, darkness down a little bit. And then let me see what magenta is really doing. See how magenta is not doing much of anything. I'm actually going to turn it down because it was more or less in his pants than it was on the red areas. So I'm happy with that. I could say 21 is showing a little bit of a muddier red. So let's click on him and let's go to layer, new adjustment layer, and give it hue saturation with a clipping mask. Okay. Let's go to our reds, crank it up. Oh yes, definitely some red going on there, and it's even in his pants. So just gonna crank that red up a little bit. That's where it was before, and I hope you can see that difference there. It gives it a little bit of pop. Alright, so we have our players in place now. I'm pretty much satisfied with the coloration we have here. And then the next thing we need to do is work on our arrangement and our placement. Well, let's go ahead and bring in the logos because that would also help. So let us, right now I'm going to turn off my players just so I can go ahead and figure out where I want to get this logo. And I'll turn back on my fire. Alright, so logo, we're going to check our folder for Chiefs, CHIE. There's the word mark, and then I also see the vector. So let's bring in the word mark, drag it onto our artboard. Ooh, it says it could not place. Let's see what's going on. Well, let's see, we've got the logo. That one does just fine. And we'll go ahead and blow it up. As a matter of fact, I'll open it in Illustrator. I may have to do the same thing to the word mark to figure out why it isn't pulling in. So we'll let Illustrator do its thing. Meanwhile, I Control T. and transform the size here. Now I'm going to drag, hit enter to lock in that size, and I'm going to drag this into my, not the word mark layer, I want this on my tiger's logo, which is the logo in the background. I'm going to expand that way I can see where I'm putting it. I'm going to put it in front of the tiger, and then I'm going to delete my tiger now. And before you get started, that's what I was supposed to do. Whenever you have a template file, go ahead and save as, and save this template as some other name, because what will happen is you'll start playing in it and you'll be hitting Control S and saving things that you don't want to save. And for this one, we'll do Sis Chiefs Fire Football Photo Action. That'll be good enough for me. And you can see how the crackling effect affected the logo here, and then we can turn it off, or we can add to it and change things as well. So I'm going to leave it alone for now, because we're going to make our focus getting the images in place and seeing how this all plays together. So let's see what's going on. Object, artboards. I'm going to fit this to selected art, so next time that I go to change that size, it won't be so big. Control T. See, now I'm just transforming this immediate image rather than the big old box that was around it. Next step, we're going on to the word mark, but we have to see what's going on with that word mark, so let's go ahead and open it up, see what's going on. Now, if you don't have Illustrator, there are free vector editing programs out there. And let's do save as and see what's going on with this thing. Save it as an SVG. Save. Yes, replace that. Okay. And let's see if I click off of it, click back on it, drag it in, if it lets me do my thing. There we go. And we're going to pull this in the layer with the word mark. So I can get rid of my tiger's logo now, and I have my word mark in the front. Now let's go ahead and bring our players back in. See what we're looking like here. And for some reason, this color on this logo is not looking quite right to me. There's a few things I can do. I can go into the Illustrator file and change it, or we can do what we've been doing with the players. We can do a layer, new adjustment, hue and saturation, clip and mask, and let's go to the reds, crank it up for a second just so we can see, and that looks like that actually did exactly what I needed to do. I can lighten it up a bit if the red was a little too dark, but I think that works for what we needed to do. And next step is playing with this layout. And I think I might, with the word mark, is go ahead and give it an outline. So I'm going to go down to my effects, give it a stroke. And right now it's on a gradient, like a metallic gold gradient. I'm going to go with a color. And let's see if I can follow the same kind of black and white. Let's give it another stroke, and let's make one stroke white, one stroke black, and we'll make one size smaller than the other and see if we want to rearrange that. let's see if I do, I'm going to bring the black stroke in front of the white stroke, and then reduce the size of the black stroke, increase the size of the white stroke, and see if that's what I want. And then maybe I'll even do another stroke on the inside and make it white. Instead of an outside stroke, we're going to change the position to inside. Okay, I'm feeling it a little bit better. And this is just the beginning phase, so if we see that we have a little conflict in what our contrast in our image provides, then we can switch it up a little bit later. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. Like I said, we have one that has a full body. Everyone else is cut off, so what we have to do is be creative about where we're placing people, so that I'm trying to select Chris. There we go. And like, see how Chris's hand's cut off? Either I'm going to have to fade that off somehow, or I'm going to find a way to like hide his hand and his leg somewhere in the clouds and the effects that we're doing. So now that I'm seeing how big I want everything, I'm going to resize some of these images so that we'll have quite a little bit of overlapping, and that overlapping will also help with missing features. There is no rhyme or reason to what I'm doing right now other than trying to find some type of visual balance and something that's pleasing to the eye. Like I said, this player with 21 was requested, and that's the best picture I can find, so we're going to work with it. Let's see, we've got, maybe we'll put quarterback in the middle, or let's see, maybe 87 goes in the middle. Let's see. $87 in front of, oh, and here's another thing. If I have a hue and saturation adjustment, I want to keep these things together, so I'm going to create a group so that they stay together. Otherwise, I'm not paying attention sometimes when I'm dragging my layers, and I will drag a picture between the photo and its corresponding adjustment layer, and then that causes problems because later on I'm like, why is this so intensely red? And it'll be because I dragged something between something that was intended to stay with the clipping layer below it. Alright, so good on that. Let's see. Oh yes, I was putting number 15 in the middle. Yay, nay. We'll see. And 95 I'm going to bring to the back layer. Okay, that seems to be working okay. 10 shows a little action forward, so I'm thinking he'll go on this side. Our kicker, what do we want to do with our kicker? Well, we can put him back up top because really 21 doesn't have a lot of action. Or not, he has action, he just doesn't have a lot of features showing like his face or anything like that. So really we're just using this image because it has the jersey where you can see his number, so it does give him some recognition. Mr. Kicker, let's go ahead and make you a little bit bigger, and then if we can't get all of his features in there, that's fine too. And this might be one of those situations where we let some of the image go in front of the word mark and some of it fall behind it. But we will definitely place him in front of number 10 so that it overlaps the legs that are cut off. And then number 10 we'll bring in just a little bit. And I'm thinking maybe I will change out 15 and 87 because I'm not liking how the football for the kicker, which I guess I could just erase the football for the kicker. But the football for the kicker is so close to the other football. I don't know. I can play with these things all day. Don't get me started. Alright, let's see. I'm thinking we can start kind of playing with the color effects that we want to do now, because each of these players will kind of have its own cloud, and then we'll have an overall cloud. So first thing I'm going to do is take this 21, and I've already got a hue saturation layer in here. I'm going to go ahead and do a adjustment layer where I make this image black and white. Let's see, layer, new adjustment layer, and we're going to do black and white. Now it's going to apply this to that entire image, and that's fine because what we're going to do is paint that, get our paint bucket, paint that entire layer with the black, and then we're going to paint in with the white brush. So I'm going to grab my white foreground color and a standard brush out of my general brushes here. I'm going to soft round brush, right click, pull that size down a little bit, and I'm just going to paint the areas that I want to kind of gray out because he's not really the focus. Okay, and then if I want this to be just a little less obvious that I graded out, I might take the fill layer and bring it down just a little bit, so it might let a little bit of its color show through, but not make it look completely black and white. Like I said, I just don't want him to be the focus. And I could also, when I'm putting my clouds and my design elements, kind of use that as an excuse to go over some of that image. So as of right now, let me see, I might take 95, bring him down here, let the logo cut off the top of his hand. And let's see what kicker looks like up here. No, that's not what I want. Kind of throws off that image there. We could put the kicker here and the quarterback here. Quarterback here and 87 here. And y'all forgive me. Like I said, I could play with this stuff all day. And this is usually what you're paying for when somebody else does your layout. You might think this type of stuff is really easy, but I do urge you to go ahead and even if you don't get a template, it's fine. Go ahead and try this layout, these layout techniques for yourself. You'll be amazed at how much you can pull off and make yourself proud and wow people with just simply cutting out photos and arranging them. Right, I might take 21 because he's getting a lot of attention up there to the top and it's not really doing anything to have that primary attention up there. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Duh. I got to take this whole group, and as a matter of fact, it's the perfect opportunity to show you what linking does. So I can select all three of these and I hit my chain link here and it's going to link all of these. So no matter if I were to move one of these or all of them, matter of fact, let me just highlight one of them and move it, and you'll see that the adjustment layers went right along with it. So yeah, I may do that so that it will look like I'll put him in front of the Chiefs logo a little bit and then put the player that he is tackling behind the logo. So that's how we arrange that. Then our kicker is at this point kicking our player. We don't want that either. And the kicker is not proportional to the other players unless he's just really tiny. And I'm going by helmet size because even if people are different body sizes, their heads, even though some people have bigger heads than others, heads are generally about uniform in size. So that's what I'm using to gauge that there. And like I said, I might just take this football out completely just because it does throw things off quite a little bit. But I do feel like we have better attention with the top and bottom composition now. And I think I'm going to put him here with the white jersey because it'll break up where 21 looks a little jumbled up with the other player. Then I can hide that broken off hand. I can take 10 and put 10 behind. Did I choose 10? We'll put 10 behind 21. Okay. So it looks like we're getting somewhere now. And at this point, we're going to take these individual players and we're going to do a little bit of fading off. So if it's not already in a group, then we can just do a layer mask directly on that particular layer. I'm going to grab my paintbrush and white reveals and black conceals. So we want the black because we want to take off some of these hard edges on the graphic. So I'm going to take my black, and that's not my paintbrush, that was my masking tool. I'm going to take my paintbrush, make the brush size a bit bigger, and I'm taking a soft round brush so that when I swipe across my image, I'm not deleting any pixels. This is not destructive. This is just playing with this layer mask, and of course the layer mask is automatically linked, so when I move the image, the mask moves with it. Same thing down here for number 15. We're going to add a layer mask with this icon down here. Grab our paintbrush tool and paint away a little bit there. And already it's starting to look a little more like a composition and not just magazine cutouts. What else? Now for 21, I'm going to do the layer mask to the entire group. And let's just play with the idea. Hit undo of taking away the part that's over the logo. And then we can bring back parts later if we want to. Just so I can see what's going on with that logo. Alright, still thinking now 87 looks bigger than 15, but he might just be a little bit bigger because I don't see that much of a difference in the helmet size. Probably is bigger. I'm probably making the kicker a bit bigger than he needs to be, and I keep playing with that. Let's right click on our kicker. And he's got his little Nikes on, so that's perfect to go forefront there. And let's see what else we may need to fade off. 10 is covering up 95 pretty good, so we're not seeing the hard lines of legs, but if we need to, we can always go back and adjust that. And just because I want to, I'm going to make 15 just a tad bit bigger because we have 3 elements or subjects on the right side, so I'm feeling like my left side is a little bit off balance. Alright, so football, let's grab our kicker group, and I'm going to add a layer mask, and for right now I'm just going to paint off this football. It's driving me crazy. All right, and this logo, or not the logo, doesn't have the yellow orange in it, but it looks like the team colors does have that orange color to it. So the fire is actually really playing with these reds really well. And we can see what we want to do with our other color. So we might want to add some red swirls and energy type vibes to it. So let's start on that. Let's go with number 87. And I'm going to go ahead and do a group for him, because within this group I'm going to add a new layer and I'm going to paint around him, but I want to make sure that I don't get too close to the edge. So I'm going to pull him over, pull this group over just a little bit while I'm painting, so that when I pull the group back I can fade off that edge and not have a very sharp edge. If you paint too close to this edge, you won't see it until you print it, and it will have a very stark cut line, and all the work that you did to make this beautiful faded off shape will definitely be in vain. So let's choose our paintbrush tool and let's see what brushes we're going to get into today. I've got some cool ones here that are, you know, some random motion brushes. And we're just going to play with. Oh, and we have to be on this blank layer that we created, because you don't want to do this on your image. You will destroy your image, and just in case you want to go back, you want to make sure that everything that you do right now is on a separate layer that you can reverse. So what I'm going to do is select, I'm going to hit my Alt. Anytime you're in a paintbrush, you can hold down Alt and it becomes a temporary color picker. So I'm going to pick some red from somewhere in the graphic and see if that's what I do. That one was a little fuzzier than I want. I want something crisp and clean and where I can see my motion. Let's see if that is going to work for us. Yeah, there we go. A little cellular, nebula, webbing. I don't know what it is, but it's something that's pretty organic. I'm going to take my group and, like I said, I'm going to move this because you saw I got real close to my edge and I almost didn't follow my own advice. I'm going to bring it over just a little bit so while I'm painting, get back on my paintbrush. We got 1 and 2. I'm liking that, and then I just want to be able to switch it up and do layers. So I might do a little bit of red and I might do white on top of that. So let's say I'm going to add another color. I'll actually do another layer, and this time let's choose a different brush. I've got a little swirl or something somewhere. Let's see what that looks like. Can't really tell because I did the red again, but I'm going to hold down my Alt key, grab some white. Okay. Gave it a little motion. And here's the other thing. If we start painting on the image a little too much, let's say I'm giving a little too much fog around this, I can add a layer mask to just that brush layer, grab my black, and I can even use the same pattern brush here to remove as well. I don't have to always use a standard brush to remove. And that just revealed more of the original image. And then I can go create another layer on top. Let's say I did want to, or maybe I want to go behind this layer. So add a new layer. Let's go behind the red, and maybe I want to do a little bit of either darker red or maybe even black. Let's try black. I'm going to Alt, select some black somewhere in the image, and if I didn't see black, I could always go create a black. Let's choose a different brush here. Now you see that has its own action. Now I could take this brush and bring it below the image. Everything doesn't have to be on top of the image. And now all together, I have a group with these little effects on it. And he has his own little energy vibe going on there. And you'll see how I'm cutting off towards the edge of that page there? We're going to fix that later because we don't want that going on. So each player, you can go in and give them his own effect, or you can try to remember which brushes you used. I could even take 1, 2, and 3, which are my brushes here, and I could literally drag. Now let's say I'm going to apply this to number 10, so I'm going to Alt and drag them below the number 10. Now of course it's still in the same location, but I'm going to put them on my 10. And of course I think the way we had that one laid out is red and white were above the image and the black was below the image. I'm going to go ahead and group all of these for 10. And this may or may not work for this. I can Control T and change it. So you don't have to redo all of these brushes every single time. And you could even just rotate. So I got my red layer, I might rotate it so that it doesn't look exactly the same, or I don't have the same orientation of the red, but all of that is completely up to you. You may just want to play with different brushes and see what they all do. And then of course we have that black layer underneath. I can Control T and transform that to be a little bit smaller. Now here's another thing we could do. Let's say I didn't want that to be red. I can do a layer effect to that brush layer and go to my effects, do a color overlay, and it had a default of that gray selected, which was the last color we had. But I could go and let's say I want to select the orange color on the jersey. Like this tangerine color, and see how that just changed that color, and I did not have to repaint it. So you have that option as well to play with the colors, play with the brushes. And like I said, I never know what I'm going to end up with. I may not like how webby and stringy this looks as red, so I may go back and give it more of a cloud appearance. We'll see. We're just going to build as we go. And as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and play with 15. And I think he's not in a group, so let's go ahead and give him a group. Let's add a layer, and this time we are going to play with another paintbrush. Let's see. I think I'm going to pick one. It's a little more dense. Ooh, and that was black there. Let's Alt select some red somewhere. See what that gives me, a little red cloud. And let's add something on top of that. Do the Alt and select that orange, and I'll just add it a little fire. If I don't like the size of it, let me go back once more, and I did put that red or the fire on the same layer as the red. I'm going to try my best to remember to do a new layer just in case I want to switch it up. So I'm going to increase the size just a little bit. And then I can also go and change my opacity and my flow of the brush. But really and truly, I rather do it like this, since I'm doing a different layer in full opacity, and then just bring my fill down. So if I felt like it was a little too strong, I would just bring it down just a little bit, make it just a little less opaque, and then I can come back and clean up, bring my logo to the forefront, that sort of thing. So I'm liking the fire. Let me see if I have some other fire that I like. That's the smoke. So let's grab some smoke, and we'll make the smoke black, and we'll put it behind the player. So we'll do a new layer just for the smoke, put it behind the player, and then we'll grab black color from somewhere. And it doesn't have to be pure black, you can grab a lighter black, but I rather go with the pure black and then come back. Oh, we're not seeing it because it's on the bottom layer. And come back and lighten it if I feel like it's too much black. So yeah. And this is one of the brushes that will randomly change orientation and size. So every time you click, you're going to get something different. And you can kind of preview it. You can see that this is a bigger brush size there, and then the next one is smaller. And I can just build on that. And of course, this is building behind the player. Just randomly click there. So I'm liking that right now probably better than the webby look. So because I did these on different layers, I can go back and I can turn off anything that I don't like the look of. Like the red web, I'm not liking, and the black web, I'm not liking. I'm liking the flame and the cloudiness a little bit better. And if it wasn't so many pictures, I probably would like more of the action with the swirls and everything, but I think because of so many players, it's throwing me off a little bit. So let's go back, 87, that white isn't doing too much, but let me bring it below the image and see what that does for us. Just gives them a little backwards glow. We'll see if we're going to keep that going. Right now, what do I have? The smoke still on. So I'm going to create a new layer and give him a little smoke. Now let's go ahead and go above him, create a new layer, and let's do smoke. Let's do a little bit of flame. So this flame, oh no, we did a cloudier red. So I'm not sure what I use for the cloudy red. Probably something like that one. Let's alt, pick up some red from somewhere. Yep, I think that's exactly what I used. And we can reduce the brush size if we want. And another thing, if you click in the same location more than once, it makes that appear darker. Bring it down just a little bit in size, and a little bit of red. And then we're going to layer on new layer. Let's do the fire now, or the flame. I think I had this one for the flame. I'm going to select that color from the sock again. Oh, I forgot this one's going to automatically change my brushes. Oh, and if it's something I don't like, I'll just click like off the board. Like if I want a bigger one of these and it's not giving it to me, but the orientation is wrong, I can just click off the board and it will reset the next one. I'm going to give a little bit more size to it. There we go. And I might even add a layer of flames behind him. see, we've got to work on our right hand side now. Let's do 95. Looks like he already has a group. Let's add a layer to the front. And now that I kind of know what I'm working with, I'm going to go ahead and just do my flames. Because I know I was doing orange flames on top. I'm going to do the same thing to 10. He's got a group. And I think we had some of the webby stuff in there. We're going to delete that. Do a new layer on top for that one. And we're going to do an orange flame while we're in there. And again, like I said, for 21, I can put the orange flame over the opposition so that it's not so obvious that he's in the picture. Let's go ahead and create a new layer. I don't want this new layer to be underneath my layer adjustments. So I'm on my new layer, grab my brush, and let's see if I put a flame right on top of him. Okay, a lot less noticeable. And then I'm going to put a flame over the part of his leg that is missing. So that's just our orange. Now we can build up with the red. So the red layer was below the orange. And let's remember what brush we used. I believe this is 2270. And I'm going to alt select some red from somewhere. And doesn't always have to be the same red every time. Oops. What am I on? I'm working on 21. So 21, probably just have a little bit of red right here. Maybe even there. And then I can also come in, do a layer mask to that red, and take one of my other brushes, maybe even my fire brush, and I'm on the layer mask and I'm going to be painting black, so it's going to start eating some of that away, eating some of that red away. And then that way I can make it look like a stamped edge and not like a straight up cut off edge there. And then I also reveal some of his helmet because I feel like I went over his face a little too much in his number, because that's all we really have to go for, so we need to make sure we reveal it. Alright, so let's add some more red to 10. Let's add a layer behind the orange and in front of the image. We still have red selected, but I need my 2270 brush. I'm going to right click and bring the size down a little bit because I feel like it's coming off of the edge of the paper a little too much. And if this thing jumps from like 500 to 1000, just manually put in a number until you get something like what you want. Okay, we've got 95 to do next. Right click. I see my 95. I'm going to add a new layer, and that one is going to be below the orange. This is going to be our red. Grab my paintbrush and add this red. Now at this point I can take my flames, I can transform them, rotate. I can even make them a little less transparent. see what I want to do with Mr. Kicker here. And oh, we didn't add any smoke behind our other ones, and I'm thinking the reason why is because I want to focus on adding the black to the very back layer. So this is the flames and the black smoke that we had default. And then the smoke that we already had on here. And where is our triangle? Right now we've got our photo group above our triangle, and we're going to bring the photo group below the logo, below the triangle. So we start to see how our little geometric image starts to pull through. And there are parts of the triangle that we do not want to be in front of our photo. So like especially when it's cutting off a face or an important part of the image. So we'll go to our triangle, and right now we can add a layer mask to the whole triangle layer, and then we can use the paintbrush. Now let's just use a regular soft brush to conceal where we want the logo, where we want the photo to come through. So we definitely don't want stripes on anybody's face. We want those faces to be recognizable. I'll let a little bit of the stripe fade through the jersey or the uniform, that's fine. But we want to be able to see faces. And maybe bring the size down just a little bit, and I'm going to reveal his arm there so it looks like it's in front of the triangle. Let's see what else we got going on. We got our logo, watermark. Oh, I put my photo in my watermark. I was wondering why that was, why the crackling effect was applied to my photo. I don't want that. So we're going to put photos on this group. And I want this group to be on its own, not within a group. So I just dragged it down until I saw the double lines. The double lines means that it's not within another group, standing alone. And then I'm feeling like this side is a little heavy, you know, with the other player. And with the flames there, it kind of takes away from my triangular effect. So now what I'm going to do to my photos layer, I can add a layer mask to it. Take me a brush, and I may not want to do just a soft round brush and fade it. I may want to take my, and these are actually paint splash brushes here. I don't think that's going to be what we want to use. We'll do a whole template and tutorial on using the paint splash brushes. I'm going to stick with one of these dense smoke looking brushes, and then I'm going to right click, make this size a little bit larger, and I'm on my photo layer. And I can still drag the brush, but I like to click it so that it gets a kind of clean shape. And then we could even start erasing him off just a little bit. And if I don't want to manipulate the photo, like I just almost took off the football, I can go to the layer where it has the red here, and that just painted red. I would need to add a layer mask just to that, so I can clean that up without affecting the photo on that layer. And if you're ever confused on what you're clicking on, when you have your selection tool, you can always right click. Anything that you're touching will show up in this option down here. And I'm just going to get close because I know that's where my player is. That's my red from this layer. I've already got a layer mask on it. Use my paintbrush to kind of eat away at some of that. Same thing with the orange there. Add a layer mask and eat away at some of that orange a little bit. So at this point, I'm just going to clean up my flames and my colors a little bit till I get it visually how I want it. And I'm probably going to do that without you having to watch me. That way this video won't be so drawn out. And then when I come back, all we'll be doing is cleaning up the logo, making sure it's in the forefront, you know, showing the background logo with and without the antique text, and probably cleaning up some of this black smoke, or maybe even adding some more to make it look a little more dynamic. But other than that, we're almost done. Give me just a moment and I'll be back. Alright, so I just took a couple of minutes to clean up some of my smoke, and I basically made it a little less opaque, so I changed the opacity to, or changed the fill to around 53% so it wasn't stark black. It's a little more of a gray smoke. And I think I'm okay with that for now. And what I'm going to do is show you how we can bring a little bit of the player to the foreground. So let's say I wanted this leg to be in front of the symbol here. What I would do is take everything about him, which is his entire group, and hold down Alt, and I'm going to drag it in front of the logo. And that's supposed to go in front of the layer mask for that group too. And right now you'll see that it already has a layer mask on it. I'm going to delete that layer mask and let's see what else we've got going on. Let me bring this entirely to the front because I have another layer mask on there. There we go. So he's entirely in front of the logo right now, but there is a part of the logo I want to maybe put one foot in front of and the other foot behind. So maybe this extended leg is the one that's going to go behind. So I'm going to create a layer mask for this entire group. Now mind you, he has another layer that's behind the logo as well. I'm going to turn this layer with the Chiefs into a smart object. And the reason why is because when I select everything, I wanted to include the strokes and everything that's already on there as part of the mask. So I'm going to hold down the Control key, select the thumbnail, and it's going to use this entire space here to create a clipping mask if I choose that. So I'm going to go back to my layer mask for the kicker, and then I'm going to paint with my paintbrush. I'm going to choose just a regular old soft brush, and I'm going to use the black to conceal. I'm going to conceal this entire leg right here. And even if I tried to paint on him outside of the march ants area, it wouldn't do anything. And before I deleted anything, I wanted to see if this was the good placement for him. I think that's going to be fine. say I remove that one. And then I'm going to select, deselect to take away those marching ends, and I can see his leg in front of the logo a little bit. I don't know if I'm liking it. I'm not going to be too picky right now because at this point, you know, when you're tired and you just keep looking at the same thing over and over again, it's best to just give yourself a little time and walk away from it. Now what I am going to do is probably add a little bit of a drop shadow to the logo. So let's go with the word mark, go to that layer, and now that entire layer I can create a drop shadow. And I'm just playing with the distance, the spread, and the size of the drop shadow to see how I want to make that stand off. And because this is a smart object, I can double click it and change the strokes that we added to it earlier. I think I'm okay with it as is. Let's say okay there. And then I want to make sure that my edges are clean. See how the smoke is right here on this edge? I guarantee you when this prints and you press it on the shirt, it will have a stark line there. Now, one thing that you can do to ensure that you don't end up with that issue is to group absolutely everything. Group it. Add a layer mask to it. Then you can do a gradient towards the outside. I don't want to do that because I have some organic shapes here, and the gradient kind of squares things off. Even though it fades it, it squares it off. I would rather use one of our textured brushes to clean this edge up and give it more of like a grungy, unpredictable edge. So I'll choose my inside plane, right click, make sure my flow and opacity is on 100% because I don't want to be clicking forever. And now if you can see what's happening here, I'm coming along this edge, and if I swipe, it's gonna do more of a straight edge. But if I click, it gives me a textured look. Now I'll swipe down here because I don't really have anything under here. I'm just making certain that I don't have anything extraneous that's going to make a hard edge when I go to print. And if you really want to see, sometimes I'll turn on a weird layer, like this purple has nothing to do with the graphic, and it'll help me see what I have to eat away at. And I don't want to get too close to the logo because it will actually eat that away as well. So I can see where I'm really close, and even him will eat away at him a little bit because he's not important. This edge over here is where I was getting kind of dangerously close. And I don't want to get too close to the player because I'll end up eating away at some of the attributes that I really want to see. Took away too much of that logo. And from here, I think we pretty much have what we need. Everything's cleaned up. And if I wanted to make really certain, like I said, you can even create another layer mask where you use your gradient. And we're going to be on the layer mask. I'll create, oh, never mind, let me delete that. Disable, delete. I'm going to just create a group because I want to show you what this does, and I want to be able to take it off if I don't like it. This is my go-to method for creating gradient edges, especially like if somebody gives me a square photo and I just can't deal with a square photo and I don't want to do a layer mask. I'll take my gradient tool, start from the edge, give myself, you have to be on the edge of the paper. Come in and hold down the shift key so that it'll draw the line straight. And from here, it creates a nice soft edge from the edge of the paper. And that's cool, especially when I take it off, you can see what it does. It fades off some of the things that I want to be prominent on these edges. So if I was just doing that to everything but the photos, then that would be fine, because that would happen to fade away some of my background, but not the photos like where the football and the arms are. But that's not the case, so that's why I was telling you I know I don't want to do it on this one. I'm just going to disable it so you can see when I enable it how much of an effect it has to this edge. And that would be okay for some people. It just bugs me when I wanted something to pop out like that football and I was faded off. But I could also come in, leave that, take my white, because white reveals. I can grab my brush and reveal just that football, just his arm. And then that way I'm safe both ways. So I think I'll keep this. I think some of his hand got blended off too. A little bit of logo. We'll grab that logo back. And then that way you're absolutely positive you're not going to have any stark lines on these edges of the graphic. And that's it, Chief. So that makes another Photoshop tutorial with the multiple photos. I hope that you have fun building your graphics and creating the effects that you want to see. If there's something that you'd like to see, one of the templates that we have available, please let me know and I can do it as a demonstration. For now, I guess I'm signing off. Good night, and we'll have another project for you tomorrow.